We take you live on tape to Branson, Missouri, to talk with two of ventriloquism's most original thinkers. Today on
Ventriloquism Weekly.
Hello, Dio. It is Monday, August 26th, 2013. My name is Matt Bailey, and I'm so excited for the show that we have today. But before we get started, I want to ask all of you to please stick with me to the end. Don't leave after our interview because I have an important announcement. It's nothing bad. It's just that if you don't hear it, you're going to be confused over the next couple of weeks, and we don't want that. I want to keep you guys, our loyal followers, our loyal listeners, in the loop. So please just stay with me to the end of this extended special edition of Ventriloquism Weekly. It's another milestone day for us, and this is such an exciting time. I had such a blast doing this one on location. So come with me now via a recording on my iPad to Branson, Missouri, where two influential ventriloquists live and perform in their own stage shows. Jim Barber is a singing ventriloquist who is trained in musical theater and classical singing. He is known for his act Barber and Seville. He's been headlining in Branson, starring alongside theater co-owner and magician Dave Hamner in the Hamner Barber Variety Show for 10 years. And Todd Oliver is recognized by ventriloquists around the world for his real-life talking dogs. This act has taken him across the globe and most recently given him a turn on Howard Stern's first season as a judge on America's Got Talent. The Shock Jock even brought back this family-friendly entertainer as a wild card, and Todd made it all the way to the top 4 in the semi-finals. Both acts have been seen on The Late Show with David Letterman, as well as countless other national television appearances. We take you now to the box office at the Hamner Barber Theater and our roundtable with Jim Barber and Todd Oliver. We are here in beautiful Branson, Missouri with two of the town's finest entertainers, ventriloquists Jim Barber and Todd Oliver. We are here in the box office at the Hamner Barber Theater. Todd and I just saw the fantastic Hamner Barber Variety Show, and headlined by none other than Jim Barber. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. You said that just like I wrote it.
And all the way down the strip, at the Americana Theatre, we welcome Todd Oliver.
Yay!
I'm the guy with the dog.
Yes, we'll get to that. Both very, very original ventriloquists, and I begin at the beginning with my guests. Now, we're just going to go around, have a conversation, how you guys got started, where your paths started.
Well, I grew up in the South Dakota, in Rapid City, South Dakota, and I didn't know anyone in show business, let alone ventriloquism. But when I was 9 years old, my family took a vacation to Medora, North Dakota, and they have an outdoor Wild West show, which today is still running. And there was a man on that show named John Shirley who did a marionette act with these giant marionette puppets, and I was so enthralled, I went home and I started making hand puppets, kind of Muppet-style puppets. And I also got into magic at the same time. So I was about 11 years old, doing birthday party shows as Jim the Magician around my hometown. And then all through high school, I was very popular in my hometown with all the Cub Scout blue and gold banquets and church shows and things like that. And then it came time for college and something to fall back on. So I went to the School of Mines and Technology in South Dakota to learn engineering and be an architect. But the highlight of my first year was that I won the talent contest with my ventriloquist act.
Fantastic.
And so performing was in my blood, and so I thought, I really want to go after this, but I didn't know where to go, so I knew that the University of Minnesota in Minneapolis had a broadcasting, and they had a theater program. So I went to Minnesota, and I studied theater arts and broadcasting arts, and got my degree there. And during that time, while I was a television student, I had a local kids TV show on Channel 29, UHF's show, and I met another young ventriloquist named Todd Oliver, and Todd came on the show a few times with us, and we did some songs together. We'd pull our dummies out and we'd sing "Together Wherever We Go."
Really? I never knew you two worked together.
We did. That was a long time ago when we were both just getting started, and then our paths kind of we went in different directions for a long time. I went to Opryland in Nashville, Tennessee, for 2 years aboard the General Jackson showboat and performed. And then I left for Philadelphia, and then guess who took my place on the General Jackson? Todd Oliver. And Todd worked there for about 7 years, I think. And I won't tell your story, but then years later, I was in the college circuit, and for almost 10 years, I traveled all over the United States doing college shows and performed at about just almost 2,000 campuses. And I was getting kind of burned out from the schedule after all that time. And during my college years, I had worked with a young guitar singer named Glenn Campbell. And Glenn was performing in Frankenmuth, Michigan for an outdoor tent show, and I opened for him. And 6 years later, they remembered me when they were opening a theater in this little town called Branson, Missouri. And they called me up and said, "Would you like to be in our variety show?" And I said, "Absolutely." And it got me off the road. And it was the very first time I was part of a big production show, where it wasn't just myself doing my own little act. I was in a variety show with a live band and dancers and special lighting effects, and a huge audience. Every day we had almost 2,000 people twice a day, and it was a great experience for me. And so I loved that, and I loved working with Glenn Campbell and his group, and they kind of became like a family to me. And during that time, that was the mid-'90s, I also worked with the great Eddie Rabbitt, who wrote a lot of songs like "I Love a Rainy Night."
Yes.
He had so many hits. He had over 72 #1 hit songs.
Wow.
And I got to open for Eddie, and on his very last show, he called me out on stage, and he and I sang "I Love a Rainy Night" together.
Oh, great.
In front of the rain curtain, and he had his arm around me, and he told me that he just loved me. And at that time, nobody knew it, not even his band, but he had cancer. And within a month or two, he was dead. And so I got to perform with Eddie, and I was in shock when I heard it on the news. But so Branson really was a special time for me. But when Glenn's show closed in 1996, I had discovered this thing called the internet.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, I built Glenn Campbell's first official website, hand-coded it with HTML. And I kind of got the bug for multimedia, and there was a brand new program at the Art Institute of Philadelphia called Multimedia. And so I went and I signed up, and for the next 2 years I was going to school every night at the Art Institute of Philadelphia, and then performing at resorts up in the Poconos to earn money and pay the bills while I went to school. And I really thought I was getting out of show business at that point, and I was going to go into multimedia, and I had a job with a firm in Princeton, New Jersey. I was doing some animation work for them. And then several things happened. My wife is an interior decorator. She was doing theater up and down the East Coast, and we decided to move back to Branson. I would open a multimedia studio, maybe get a performing job. She would do her decorating. And so we ended up moving back. I was in a show here for a year, and then after that opened a multimedia business in town. She had her decorating business, and then we had a baby, and now Branson's been our home, since 1999, and we've been here all this time. But so that's the nutshell. But I came back, worked with a year with Kirby Van Burch in a magic show here. Worked with the Osmonds on ice. I had to do my act on ice, so I had boots with spikes in them so I wouldn't slip on the ice.
Great. And
did that for a year. Then took a year away from doing shows, and then came back with Jimmy Osmond again in a show called the American Jukebox Show. And I shared a dressing room, a very small dressing room, with the Hamners, illusionists, the Hamners, and we got along great. And after that show closed 2 years later, there was an offering for us to come into this theater, which originally was the Brashler Theater. Then the Sons of the Pioneers were in here, and then the owner at the time invited us to come in. And long story short, we ended up buying it the next year, and this is our 10th year doing the Hamner Barber Show.
Fantastic, and we'll get to talking about your final season in just a minute. We're going to switch over here to Todd. Your beginnings in ventriloquism.
I was Jim Barber's dummy.
Did you see me?
And I wish I still was, because I'd be making money now.
Folks, can you tell it's very late at night?
I wish I would have kept the job, but I got fired. So, actually, Jim, one of the, some book I read, it said, ventriloquists are such incredibly nice people, and it's true.
It is.
Because I was so bad, when I got started, I had the dummy in one hand, the joke book in the other. and Jim invited me on his television show. Now, Jim was
granted,
a ventriloquist.
This was a pretty low quality television.
Well,
I mean, it was an important show. Casey Jones,
Casey Jones
was a big deal to people that grew up in Minnesota.
One of my heroes. I watched him when I was a kid.
I should say a low budget show. We had zero budget, so I would come in with a box of props and we'd make stuff up. But when Todd and I came in, that was high. That was quality. That was good TV.
It was just great, and I thought it was so wonderful to hear that Casey Jones was back on television because he was such a wonderful role model for youngsters. And then Jim was doing the show, and Jim invited me on the show, which was so great because I just got back into ventriloquism. But like Jim said, I was a kid, and my dad was real sick. He had cancer, and he died on Christmas of 1968, and that was the Christmas that I got my first vent figure. It was a doll, a vent doll, a Charlie McCarthy doll.
Yeah.
And the dummy helped me with my depression, and and it was very, and then I went to the library and I read all the books I could on it, and I did magic and vent, but I didn't have a good vent figure. And back when we were kids, a good figure was still I want to say there was still at least $250 or something. At least I remember, you go on when we were kids, there was no internet, so you go on the back of the Popular Mechanics magazine and see the ad for Izzy Rizzy.
I got an Izzy Rizzy, which was, I think, made by Craig Lubbock. And,
was it really? I didn't know
believe
that.
so. And it had the living mouth, they called it, with the doe skin, so there wasn't a slotted jaw.
Yeah.
But I remember it was $350, I believe.
Now that was a lot. What year was that?
And that was in 1973.
Now that's a lot. That's a lot of money for today for a kid that want a figure, a vent figure.
Right.
But for 1973, that was a lot of money.
It was, and that was my big birthday present. I got him for my 13th birthday.
Wow, what a present!
Yeah.
You didn't know you were getting it?
Well, I asked for it.
You asked for it?
Yeah, I kind of knew.
Gosh, that must have been
Did you
exciting.
I remember when we went and we picked him up at the post office, and I sat in the back seat and I stuck his head up out the car window as people would drive by, and he would smile at people, and everyone was like, "What the?"
Oh my! See that thing? Yeah, I knew they were expensive back in. Anyways, when I was 13, I got the Fred Mayer catalog. Clinton had Clinton and Delia bought it in '69, right? Didn't they get it in '69? I want to say because she died. Madeline Mayer, she sold it to Clinton. Well, anyways, but I couldn't afford a figure. And I did a magic little vent. So I got a Pelham vent doll with the head on the stick, but a puppet body. I got it at a Clancy pet store, $15, and it had a head on the stick, and I could do a little bit with it. And, but I still didn't have a good figure, and I was also a musician, and I was in a band, and my mother, the money we had, was able to get me a guitar and amp and a combo organ. This is 1971, 72, 73. So the music kind of, I was a volunteer for the Minneapolis Public School Systems doing my Magic Vent Act, and I'd open up, do a couple of quick tricks, and then you'd hear the dummy yell something, and then I'd pull them out. And I remember doing the dove pen, because the Vent Pelham dummy, you could put your hand through a sleeve, and the dummy could have a hand, one of your hands was the dummy's hand, and then your other hand worked this head stick from the front. So I would do the dove pan, I would do tricks with the dummy, we'd do some cooking, and then, pull the cover off and the dove bird would be there.
Right.
And that was great, and that got me through high school. I got out of school, I was in the work program as an entertainer. I think it was an amazing, we pulled it off, I couldn't believe it. I was a volunteer for the Minneapolis Public School System, and they convinced my high school, that this was a job and a career thing I was going to be doing. So I was in the work program I only had to go to school 3 hours a day, and the rest of the time I was doing a volunteer show somewhere that they arranged. So 4 to 5 days a week I was out somewhere at some school or nursing home or someplace doing my act. But at night I was playing in a rock and roll band. A bunch of old hippies. Well, now they were like 20, they're 21, 22, 23. And I was 15 playing keyboards and singing guitar. And then after high school, the music thing was taken off for me, and so I put the vent aside, and I I didn't do that much magic. I really wasn't very good, you know. And then, when I got to be 24, the band broke up. The music changed. Music completely changed, and I said, this isn't for me anymore. And I was broke, and I went for a walk one night with my dog.
There we go.
I tied my dog up to the bicycle rack at the library, and I went to 793.6, and I found all those old vent books we used to read when we were kids, you know. Mm-hmm. I checked all the books out, started teaching myself, got the old vent figure back out, and then Conrad Hartz. This is still before the 1982, I guess, yeah. And I wrote to a lot of figure makers. Van Haven gave me a list of dummy figure makers. Mm-hmm. And I got the figure, and Mark Wade told me, you need to get a hold of Conrad Hartz. And I'll always be in debt to Mark for that, because I almost bought a figure made that would have been a catastrophe. So I got the figure, and started working, and I was in a show band for a while, trying to break in my act, working lounges, real drag. And then I got acquainted. I saw Jim at a show. We became friends, and we went down to Lawrence, Kansas.
Yeah.
Because I met a vent figure maker down there, Foy Brown, who carved the figure I had, Miss Lily. And one night, Jim said, "Hey, come on over. We're all going to be, we're going to watch the movie Magic at my place with some buddies of mine. Come on over."
No.
So we sat in Jim's apartment in New York, in St. Paul, and we watched Magic, and we were laughing and everything. And then I said, I want to go down to Kansas, Lawrence, Kansas, and get a figure. I want to get a second figure, because I had the Hartz figure. He said, well, my girlfriend goes to school down there. He goes, yeah. He goes, I'll drive. Let's go. So one day, Jim and I jumped in his van, and we drove down to Lawrence, Kansas, listened to Sean McCarthy tapes.
Yeah.
We got there, and Jim was able to spend time with his future wife, and I stayed with the Browns, and I bought a figure, Norman, who I still have, and then it was what happened. Jim became the hottest college act. He was I don't think any vent had worked colleges.
Well, when I got in the college market, I was working actually some comedy clubs down in the South, and a fellow who did magic in the college circuit with an agent up in Grand Rapids, Michigan, named Bob Kramer, big bad bald Bob Kramer, told Bob about this ventriloquist he saw, and Bob said, I can book you in the college market. But he said, don't do magic. Because I was doing a combination of magic and ventriloquism, but he said, don't do magic. He goes, there's dozens of magicians in the college market. Nobody's doing just ventriloquism. So if you cut the magic and only do vent, I can book the blank out of you because you're the only one in the market. Mm-hmm. And so he did. So I instantly went from working here and there to I had 10 years of solid work. Right. Night after night after night after night.
Yeah.
But I had also just got married, and so the first 10 years of our marriage, I was on the road 9 months out of the year, traveling probably 500, 600, 700, 800 miles a day, every day, driving, getting in, setting up, doing the show, getting a few hours of sleep, getting up, driving every day. But I loved it.
And that's something you both do. You both, because you have the dogs, Todd, and you were just saying about doing it. You both drive as a result of this event. So can you both talk about just the actual time on the road that it takes?
Let me say one thing about Jim, though. When Jim started playing the colleges, his reputation got really hot. Yeah. Because you won a bunch of the NACA awards, didn't you?
I won a bunch of a NACA award, Comedy Entertainer of the Year.
Yeah.
Why, thank you, Todd, for.
Well, I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why. Because first of all, if you're going to be a vent, first it's tough. You got but to work colleges as a vent, I thought this guy's got to be great. Because that's got to be, to me at the time, that had to be the toughest gig around to as a ventriloquist to play colleges. Yeah. And you were the first to do it, and he won all these awards. He was doing while he was doing. I heard he was all of a sudden the hot new guy, and he making a lot of noise doing in the colleges. I, on the other hand, was playing school assemblies, and here's a great funny story. because I'm on the road playing 4 towns a day. We call it, they used to be called the bureau tours.
Yeah.
Jim never did them because Jim knew how to make money. See, but I was playing. I was getting $70 a show. You do 4 a day and pay your own gas and motel and food. You make just enough to starve. But I was in show business, and this was great. So I'm up. Here's the deal. I'm in Dickinson, North Dakota, playing an elementary school, which is right by Medora, where you saw the vent.
Yeah.
Right?
Uh-huh.
And a lot of vents worked Medora, a lot of over the years. You know,
Yeah.
Dick Weston.
Dick Weston.
And
I want to work there someday. I never have.
I did it twice.
Yeah.
It's great. But a lot of older vents worked it. But some of the new
Well,
guys,
I'm
Ken
one of
Groves
those
worked
now,
it.
so I could probably
You
work
can
there.
do it now. But you know, you should do it.
I
You
should.
Like
I
I'm
would.
Minneapolis books it, you know.
But
At least
I'm afraid to work there because that's where it started, and I'm afraid that that's where it'll
No,
end.
you'll
I'll walk out and I'll die on stage.
No, you'll pardon the expression, you'll kill at Medora.
Yeah, oh.
But anyways, I'm playing. It's like April or May, and it's at the end of my tour, and I'm playing at a school in Dickinson, and some kid says, "We saw a ventriloquist last night at the college, and he was great."
Oh no.
And I said, "Who was it?" He said, "I forgot his name." And so I looked through the papers, and there was a little thing. It said Jim Barber at the college.
You're
and I had
kidding.
just missed you.
Oh.
Doggone, I'm staying some flop house that night, probably looking at black and white TV when I could have been seeing you at the college at Dickinson.
Wow.
So so our paths kept crossing.
Right.
But it's very important for people to realize ventriloquism is you know, it's a challenge, but there were colleges, so my hat's always been off to you.
Well,
But,
thanks.
you know,
I mean,
Yeah.
I think the reason why I worked in the colleges is because I had just graduated myself. I was about their same age, and so, you know, when I'm performing to an audience about my same age, and our humor level was kind of the same.
Yeah.
And the humor level is a little different, but yet even in the colleges, they wanted you to work clean. And so I always worked clean. Even when I did the comedy clubs, I worked clean, even though the acts around me usually didn't. But then when MTV came in, that's when things started changing in the market.
Oh, really?
Attention spans got really
Yeah.
short because everything was, a 3-minute music video.
I
So-
never
and-
looked
and
at
so
it that way, but yeah, you're right.
after that point, when music videos got real popular, I started seeing it harder for people to sit and watch a full show. But to show you how things, you're saying how different it was from the school shows you were doing and the college dates that I was doing. Well, there was another young ventriloquist named Jeff Dunham who called me up and said, "I'd like to play that college circuit that you're doing. I'm doing this show called Sugar Babies with Mickey Rooney off Broadway, but how much time do you got to do in the colleges?" And I said, "Well, probably about an hour to hour and a half." And he goes, "I only do 20 minutes." He goes, "I don't know if I can do that much material." Well, of course, now Jeff could go for 3 weeks solid and still kill him. But the thing about this business is we've all been out here working. We're all friends, and it's they are nice people. Ventriloquists really are. That's one thing that I've seen, and I love going to the convention. I haven't been able to go for many years because of my show here in Branson. We have some weeks where it's great business, and then some weeks where it's not so great. And that second week of July is like the hottest week of the year in Branson for our show.
Yeah.
So I have to be here, and so I have not been back for the convention. But next year it's on my radar, and I'm hoping to be there in 2014.
So one quick thing I want to touch on. I know it's late, and I just want to, with each of you, I want to touch on the very creative ideas that you both are working with currently. You have you have Chico, and you have Barber and Seville, and you have the Talking Dogs, of course.
Jim comes up with it, and I steal from him.
No,
So,
that I won't accept that as a viable answer.
The key is, to have a working career as a ventriloquist, you have to have something that's unique about your act and about yourself. And so the most unique thing you can do is be yourself. Because if you're yourself, nobody else can be you. And so everybody has some unique thing about them. And that's why I appreciate what you're doing, Matt, with the podcast. I've listened to your other recordings, and
Oh,
I
you
think
have?
you'll be a great
Well, thank you.
announcer. And I
He's
could
got a
see,
nice voice
I
for
could see you
broadcast.
working like on public radio as an interviewer, and I think the ventriloquism will be fun for you. But I really think you need to keep working on your journalism and your theater and your public speaking, because you've got the gift of gab. I think you'll be a great radio announcer.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, yeah. I heard he played one of his webcasts for me, and I heard the voice, and I went, boy, he sounds great on the radio.
Yeah.
So that's terrific.
And he's got a face for radio.
Did
too.
you?
He sure does.
How about you with the dogs? With the
Well, I was on I had an act. I worked with Joey and Pops, two Hearts figures, and at the time I was working the ships. About 1 year, I didn't work them very long, but in 1988 I did like 35 weeks at sea, and on one of those ships I was on. The Opryland people put the singer dancers on the ship. You ever work the Emerald Seas? A little tub down in Florida. It's long. It was a troop carrier in World War II. They turned into a cruise ship. Well, anyways, John Haywood, he booked the singer dancers on that cruise ship. So, but Frank Dorman, the agent, he's gone now, but he was in Miami Beach. He booked the acts. So Frank would supply the acts, the Opryland would supply the singer dancers. So all of a sudden, I get to the ship and they say, "Yeah, okay, you're going to be the novelty act in the show with the singer dancers." And so the Opryland people saw me. And next thing I know, like a year later or 2 years later, I get a call to go to Nashville. And I'm on the showboat. And I did a 16-minute act. I did 16, a review show, same thing, fast work. You do 16 minutes, you work real fast, punchlines close together, real fast, because the audience has been sitting through singing and dancing. So I did that, and I was playing school shows, booking my own school shows during the day, doing the review show at night, trying to do something. But did a couple television shows, but didn't really, I was making a good living. But anyways, so one day I went over to TNN, and I had done a television show twice. I did one of those, Nashville Now. You did that, didn't you? Did you?
Yeah.
Yeah. I said I went to go try to get another booking, and the producer, Bill Turner. Do you remember Bill Turner? Very nice man. He said, "Well, Todd, we've seen the dummies. What else have you got?" I said, "Well, I got some other material." No. What else? Do you have any other ideas besides the dummies? And I said, "Well, Bill, I got this idea. I know there was a guy in vaudeville who had a talking dog, so I hear, and I hear there was some guy in Europe who had one. And I worked with a juggling act, the Willems at Medora Musical.
Oh, you did? Oh, I know. I've worked with the Willems. They do plate spinning.
Yeah, they're retired now.
Yes.
I think she has arthritis now, pretty bad.
Yeah.
They're living in Florida.
Amazing
Great people.
Yeah.
I met them at Medora in 1989, right before I was in that following year I started at the Opryland, the showboat. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But she said, Todd, we saw these man say he had the hush puppy, see, with the flapper. You need to do this, Todd. See, this guy, he's dead now. He can't do the act anymore.
That's
So
how she
you thought, and John, her husband, John.
Yes.
Yeah, John, this is fantastic, Todd. This is fantastic. You got to use a dog in your act, Todd. And then a friend of mine, John Washington from England, who was a singer with the Fortunes, he told me he saw Savine, English ventriloquist Savine with Daisy May. Remember that from the English event act? He's in that Val Vox book. Well, he said Savine had a dog, and he said he laughed his head off. Well, nobody was doing it, so I went to a magician friend of mine, Jonathan Neal, and I went to a magician friend of mine, Maverick, and they directed me to some magic illusion makers. And then they told me to go somewhere else anyway, so I paid for the money for the research and development for the illusion of the talking dog. And, I got a boss. I didn't know what dog to kind of use. I was kind of confused. My brother said, you should look at a Boston Terrier. And I went, that's the dog. And then I was thinking of a name, and my friend Jonathan Neal said, he said, I like those Jewish names. They have a lot of class. They have a lot of class. You need a name with a lot of class. And he said, Irving. Irving, that's it, So,
Right.
so I just started, and then we did, we're now on the fourth gizmo, I call him, And, it's been real good, it made it, and the dog went on stage the first night and he killed, and I was just really, I had an opening song for the dog to sing. It and I had a couple jokes to get out. And I was on the General Jackson for the last 2 weeks after I did the act with the figures. I brought the dog out, and he killed. And even if he didn't kill, it didn't matter because I did the audience bit. I could do the audience bit afterwards. So even if he flopped,
Yeah.
I had the bit to close to get out of the act with.
So you had the dog the last 2 weeks of your run?
Yeah.
Oh, they probably said, "Don't leave, don't leave."
I tell you, they wanted me to go to that thing that they had over there in Myrtle Beach. They had a show there at the Alabama Theater.
Mm-hmm.
But it was short money. I didn't want to do that. And I just met Irvin Arthur, my agent, my first great agent to be, And Irvin said, "No, we got some other ideas for you." But anyways, I ended up going back, year number 8, rotating in with Scott Servine and Frank Olivier, the juggler, and Michael Troutman and me. And that 8th year, they had a bunch of different variety acts working that boat. And by that time, Irving was the act, And I just developed the material and worked with a couple of writers, and we wrote jokes together. And but as Jim said, you have to be yourself. Mm-hmm. I'll never forget watching a couple of Vents who tried to be another Vent, and it just doesn't work. It's saccharine. It doesn't work. There's a saccharine quality. You gotta, you don't have to be a movie star. You don't have to have. People, a lot of people, are really hung up on their image these days. If you don't have perfect teeth or you don't have a perfect body, it doesn't matter. I mean, you don't have to be the most handsome. Look at me. But, really, look at this Larry the Cable Guy. I mean, you use what you have to your advantage. I mean, and I remember that Fred Mayer said in his catalog, your partner has to have that pixie-like charm. And ventriloquism is a business where there's really a small investment with a big return.
Exactly.
I mean, how many magicians have we met? They got to carry the girl, and then all the illusions, and all the birds, and all the animals, and all that. Where when we were kids, we just showed the figure, the head figure. But now, of course, you need your own PA. If you're going to be playing one night or club dates or whatever they call them now. So you do need to buy more. But in the old days, all you had was a figure. And look at Willie Tyler. Willie Tyler, one figure, smart guy, great act. The figure can Jim Barber's a great singer, and his figures it sounds pretty too. Where with me it's kind of a gag, but Willie Tyler can do a whole hour with just Lester, and the music is beautiful, but there'll always be just one Willie Tyler,
right?
So there's only one Edgar Bergen. There's only one Matt Bailey. Only one Jim Barber.
Yes, and there's only one Todd Oliver.
Well, I was a set of twins, but the doctor said it wasn't. No, how's the old Choco? How's that Choco? Kind of the ugly one. Good thing I got out of the sack. That's a joke.
I didn't hear that one.
You heard that one?
I must have been.
I was a set of twins.
Oh, wow.
My dad looked at me. My mother looked at me. My mother said, "Let's call it quits." No, that's not it either. There's a joke there somewhere, but we're not on a scavenger hunt, right? What the heck, right? Okay.
Jim Barber, Todd Oliver, two enormous talents. Thank you for being with us live from Branson.
Well, where's the
Missouri.
money? There's no money.
Oh, man, listening to that back always cracks me up. We did eventually pay Todd in dog treats for Irving. For Irving, get that thought out of your head. Yeesh, we've been doing this so long, I know what you guys are thinking. So, a huge thank you again to both Jim Barber and Todd Oliver, not only for doing the show, but for everything you guys did for me while I was down in Branson. I appreciate it more than you guys will ever know, and I want to thank you here one more time. And now to our listeners, on to this announcement. And I want to say this before I begin, because the way I'm going to begin the actual announcement sounds like I'm canceling the show. But here it comes. I'm not canceling the show. It will never end unless you people stop listening, which I hope never happens. And I just want to say that these 9 weeks have really been fantastic. Some of the best moments of my life have happened through doing this show. And you might think, well, how can that be? Well, it's not only the interviews, which is a big part of it, but a lot of it has to do with interfacing with you guys. And if you'll forgive me for kind of the egomaniacal moment I'm going to have here, it's me. It is me behind the computer. It's our project. It's us together. Don't ever think that I'm going to be selfish about this. This is us. I want to know what you guys want to hear. I want to do a show you guys want to have done. But as far as the production schedule and stuff, it's just me. There's nobody else here helping me out. And so whenever somebody comments on a post on Facebook, shares the podcast, emails ventriloquismweekly@gmail.com, all of that is me personally. And so it really humbles me. It really does, to see the kind of response that this is getting. And so I'm making a big deal out of our first hiatus. Yes, we have to go on a bit of a break because I want you to understand that this is a transitional time in my life. I mean, if you'd have told me 10 weeks ago I'd be doing this show and I'd have listeners, I would have said, "Excuse me, your crystal ball is broken." Thank you, though. I wouldn't have believed you. And it's also transitional because of college. And so I want you guys to be aware of that. You mean a lot to me. The show means a lot to me, as I know it does to many of you. And they say don't believe your own hype, and I try not to, but I want you to know that I'm aware that there are some of you who say that this means a lot, and I'm not gonna stop it. I just need a break in order to transition into college. It should just be next week. It really should. And then we should be back up and running. Maybe 2 weeks. Maybe 2 weeks. It might take 2 weeks to figure out the schedule with class. And is the roommate going to be okay with it? He's cool, so he should be. But figure out how we're going to do this. And if it's going to be any longer than that, I will let you know. And I will let you know when we're back online. So, what does this mean? This means that I'm not going to try and jack up my followers when I say this. But truthfully, if you want to find out more about when we're going to come back, check out the hosting site. That's a social media thing that's easy for me to reach all of you. If you guys check over there, or if you want to follow, that's fine. You don't have to. Just if you want to be kept up to date, I'll be posting everything via tweets and stuff on that hosting site. And lastly, this is going to come back as a de facto season 2. And we'll really be able to get this off the ground and running, and I'll have a lot more flexibility to do a lot more because we'll be in one place for a longer amount of time. So send your suggestions. This show is only as good as you make it, to ventriloquismweekly@gmail.com. This is us together. So if you'll forgive that little ego thing, or if that seemed egotistical about talking about doing me being the only one back here at the computer, I apologize. But I just want you guys to know that I see it and I'm aware of it, and this is not anything I'm going to discard very soon at all. Trust me. And so, as your insurance, one of the weeks when we come back, and I'm not going to say it's the first one because the interview isn't done yet, we will have a certain Tony Award winner with us when we come back. So I'm excited for that, to do that, and I'm excited to share that with all of you. Thank you for getting this thing to 9 weeks. I can remember rambling in front of this microphone thinking we wouldn't make it to 2. So I'm over the moon with the listeners I have. Thank you. Thank you. Just thank you. And we've covered everything. We've covered everything that I normally do in the spiel at the end. So I'm just going to sign off. Signing off for Ventriloquism Weekly, I'm Matt Bailey, reminding all you vents out there to keep talking for 2. We'll see you in a couple weeks.